Hello, and welcome to Who's in the Pew? I'm Melissa Pesce, editor of La Fe magazine. This show is an extension of La Fe and a production of We Hope, which is run by the Diocese of Laredo's Communication Department. Each week, we will get to know someone new and learn a little bit about his or her unique involvement in our diocese. We hope you will enjoy meeting others who sit in the pews of parishes right here in the Diocese of Laredo. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Who's in the Pew. Today I have joining me Carlos and Rachel Morales, owners of Morales Fine and Performing Arts Center. Welcome, Carlos and Rachel. We're glad to have you here today.
Very happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yes. Carlos and Rachel, you all are parishioners at Mother Cabrini Church, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And you go there with your three sons.
Yes.
And how old are your sons?
Our youngest is 12, 13, and 16.
Oh, wow. So two teenagers.
Yes.
2 teenagers and a preteen.
And a preteen. Oh, that's got to be fun.
Yeah, well, the preteen has more attitude than all the other ones.
Oh.
He's sassy sometimes.
Yes, he is.
Well, being the baby.
I think so. He's trying to prove something.
Yes.
Prove himself.
Well, okay. And your parishioners there, and you are the music director, correct?
That's correct. Right.
And how did you come to fill this role?
So I've been doing music for churches, for liturgical music for years. I'm from Laredo, born and raised, but when I went to college, I moved to Corpus. So when I was in the Diocese of Corpus Christi, I worked at several parishes over there.
Mm-hmm.
So when I eventually ended up moving back home back in 2007, I didn't have a parish that I was set on going yet. So I actually ended up going to the Brothers of St. John. And while I was with them, I just ended up doing music for their masses and even for their on-campus ministry at Laredo College.
Oh,
So
nice.
they had a campus ministry, and we had movie nights on Fridays. And so I just started doing the music for them there. And it just kind of grew from there. I just did that for many years. And then once that stopped, because since it's a young adults program and I got too old for that program, the younger generation took over and I stepped back. And at that point, we needed a home parish because we were just at the Brothers at that time. So it just in our neighborhood is Mother Cabrini. So we ended up there, and Monsignor Harris, we had a conversation once about me helping out maybe sometimes, and asked me what I play. I told him I play guitar. He goes, okay. He goes, well, we already have a lot of those already. So he kind of brushed me off at first.
Oh.
And then maybe a couple months later, he approached me again. And he goes, would you be still willing to help? But do you play piano? I go, yes. So he goes, okay, great. And then we had a meeting, and like they say, the rest is history. So I've been there ever since. It's been many years now. It's been, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years that I've been there.
Wow, that's great. That's great. So you direct the music for all the masses there.
Right. So one of the things that was happening before I got there was every mass had their own volunteers or their own choir. Mm. So the music was very different for every mass. There was no theme that would happen for every mass. Like there should be. I mean, if you go to an English mass, a Spanish mass, or even like a Latin mass, all the readings are going to be the same.
Right.
So why shouldn't the music should kind of reflect that unity within the church too? You can go to mass here in Laredo, you can go to San Antonio. We went to mass in San Juan this past weekend, and you can go anywhere really, and the readings will always be the same.
Yes.
So there's that unity in the church already, but a lot of times in the music program within one parish, there's no unity in the music program. So that's one of the things we wanted to kind of unify and get everybody on board with that. So
nice.
that was fun.
It was quite an undertaking, I'm sure.
It has been, and it continues to be. It's been 4 or 5 years at this point, so it's kind of set now.
Right.
But it was definitely difficult at first.
Yes. Yes. Wow. Well, that's great that you all are involved there, and now your business that you have. You started that in June of 2009?
Correct.
And then you all have been married since December of 2009, correct?
Correct.
Yes, correct.
Wow. Okay, so that's a lot going on at the same time. I imagine a big leap of faith a faith starting a business for anyone who starts a business, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. I mean, it's being a business owner, you never know if you're going to, make it for the next month because it really depends. We don't sell products. We do a service. We're service based. So are we going to have enough students, enough customers to cover our overhead every month? So it is nerve wracking at first when we first started. Part of it is I do like to take risks, but conservative risks. I'm not too crazy on taking very, very big risks.
That sounds like a very big risk, though.
It's still a risk. But one of my, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but one of my favorite, parables or gospel stories is, where it says, if God knows every hair on is it a sparrow, I believe, and that sparrow still eats every day, how much more for us,
Mm-hmm.
so
he provides for the birds. He will provide for us.
Exactly. So,
I love that verse.
and I feel like God has provided for us from day one, really. Has always been, present in our life, even if we're not aware about it. So it's crazy how that happens. So even though we take risks, I've never really felt extremely scared. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
I've never felt scared. I've been worried. Like I hope we can do it. I hope it happens, but I've never been scared about it.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. That shows a lot of trust and big trust in God.
Oh yeah, for sure, definitely. So a little story about that happens all the time in little details and little
Sure.
moments in everyday life. But what happened to us when we found out we had the business already,
Mm-hmm.
and we had just started the business, trying to get it to grow. Wasn't really. We were still going to school. We were still going to school.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
You all, wow. You're both going to school.
Right.
You're newlyweds, managing a business.
Right. So we're, and the business started very small. It was at first it was just a martial arts school. So I was just teaching 2 or 3 days a week, 1 or 2 hours a night. That's it. Nothing grandiose. And we're trying to get the business to grow. We're not really making a lot of money. And then we find out that we're pregnant.
Yes.
And I remember telling Rachel, I go, what are we going to do? How, I mean, because having a child is, from a financial point of view, it's a big responsibility.
Right.
And I was playing at Mass at the Brothers at the time. And we had just played Mass. And after Mass at the Brothers, there's normally adoration. So we stayed for adoration. We were praying about it. Like, I don't know what we're going to do, but, I trust in you. I trust in God. I told him, I trust in you. And played music. And as adoration was ending, people were leaving. And this lady comes up to me and says, oh, the music was great. And, oh, well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And then she looks at me. She goes, are you looking for a job? And I go, yes. And then she tells me, the school I work at is hiring a music teacher. Would you be interested?
Oh, wow.
I'm like, yes.
Divine providence.
Yeah. And that's how I ended up being the music teacher at Mary Help.
Oh.
So I worked at Mary Help for several years. And it was just at the right time when it had to happen. Or I was like, I don't know what we would have done. But it just it's almost like it fell out of the sky into my lap. Like it's
Yes, that's a beautiful testament to God providing, to God showing up and just, like you said, if he's going to if he provides for the animals, how much more will he provide for us?
Exactly.
And all when you needed, you needed that.
Yeah, it wasn't, it wasn't out of an abundance. It was out of a need that we had.
Mm-hmm.
And God provided. So again, we worry. I know we worry sometimes, but I've never felt scared because,
there's a plan.
Yeah. If God is for us, who can be against us?
That's right.
So.
Yeah, that's right. Wow. Okay. So you're teaching at Mary Help and continuing to grow your martial arts business.
Correct.
And then Rachel, how did you begin with your part of the business and the fine arts?
Okay, so when we met originally, I mean, I've been an artist all my life, and he's always been a musician. And I was finishing school, and well, we did want to grow our school. We had the martial arts already. We wanted to do the fine art part of it, and we started out. I started getting some private students, going to their houses, teaching art. He had some private students as well. We would go to houses and teach lessons. And then we just decided to open up that part of our business. It grew from there. We got some of those students coming in. We had parents that were wanted to register their kids with us. So it grew from there. Had a few students and then grew to many more. It's very nice.
Wow. And then you added also music.
Yes.
Right.
So at what point did that come into the...
So that happened at the same time we added the art.
Okay.
So it was strictly a martial arts school. So it was just 2 hours a day that we were teaching that. So I was at Mary Hope from 7:30 to 4:30. Then I'd go teach at our school from 6 to 8, and then we get home. All while doing this, I was finishing up school. So I finished up my degree in December of 2013. And as soon as I finished in December 2013, January of 2014, she went back to school. So we kind of took turns. And and then it was 2014 October when we decided to open the art school portion. So we do art and music.
Yes.
And talking about God providing, at the time we had the idea, we had the dream, but we didn't have the resources for it. We had enough money to keep one part of the business open. We didn't have enough to open or expand to include all these other things.
Yes.
In the same plaza we were at, one of the locations became available, and I spoke to the landlord. I told him my plans and future plans, hoping that one day we'd be able to do this. We were praying about it. And he comes up to me and he says, "Mr. Morales, how about I help you out a little bit here? We'll do it was I think it was like a 5-year lease. We'll do a 5-year lease, and we'll do he called it a balloon rate. That's what he called it. I go, okay, what does that mean? He goes, I'm not going to charge you for 6 months. Then for 3 months, I'm only going to charge you $300. And then after that, I'm going to charge you $450. That's the first year. Then the next year, I'm going to charge you for one whole year, like $700 a month. And then on the third and fourth year, it was regular rent. It was a small unit. So it was like $1,100 a month. He goes, and on the fifth year, you're going to pay me like $1,400 a month to make up what he didn't charge me
that first year.
The first year. So when you averaged it out, it came out to $1,000 a month, which is the rent. But he moved it in a way where we paid next to nothing up front for a year.
Wow.
And then we were able to do catch up.
Once you built it up.
Yes. So, I mean, I don't know many landlords that would do that.
No.
So, again, I know we prayed about it, and, we left it in God's hand. We're like, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. If it's not, it's not. So, the fact that our landlord, approached and said, you know what, you guys are good tenants. We take good care of his, because it's really his building. We're just using it, but we take good care of it, and we make our payments on time. And he's like, I'd rather have you guys than somebody new. So I'm going to help you guys out.
Wow, that's incredible. That's a beautiful story, just to show how good people are. I think sometimes it's easy to lose faith in other people. We see so much that happens in the world, and hear, so many stories that are not positive. That is just so uplifting, just to show, the good in someone.
Most definitely.
And that they had that faith in you. Wow, that's really cool. And are you still at the same location, same plaza?
We are in the same location. We actually have moved suites around a little bit.
Okay.
So our original suite was 105. Yeah, 105. That was a martial arts suite. And then right across the parking lot is 204. And I wanted that one. I wanted 204 for martial arts. It was a little bit bigger. It was nicer. Of course, it was more rent. But when it became available, I was still under lease for Unit 105. And he let me move. He goes, I'll let you keep your rate. Go ahead and move to the bigger one. It was 3 months, and then we were going to bump up rent. I go, perfect. We did that. And then our original unit became available about 3 years later, 2 or 3 years later. And that's when we opened up the art and music
Oh, wow.
in the original space. So we were there for, I don't know, 5 years. And then when the 5 years were up, right next to the martial arts, which is Unit 203, opened up. So then we moved the music and the art to that one. So now they're right next
Side
to
by
each other.
side.
And then, he was gracious enough, and he said, "Yeah, go ahead and you can install a door if you want to connect them." And so we did some remodeling, and it
Nice.
was, it's worked out really well for us. And we just signed up for another 5 years. So
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well,
That's really good.
congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
incredible.
Thank you so much.
I know.
Yes, the growth just that, over the years and starting small and to see it flourish and really in the hands of God.
Yes, I do remember there was when we first started our martial arts school, we were in a gym. In a gym, we had a little room, and there was times where he would show up and he's like, "Okay, let's see if I'm going to get any students today." And we had some flyers, and a set of brothers came in, and they were his first students, and then it was just playing the waiting game. Are we gonna? Is it going to happen? It's going to work, and then that's when he did find the other job at Mary Help. We found out we were going to have a baby, but it was putting a lot of faith. Just waiting and seeing what was going to happen. It was crazy.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful story. Beautiful
Mhm.
story. Now with running a business, and now you mentioned you were pregnant at the time, but
Yes.
now you have 3 boys.
Yes.
And so that's, juggling the business and family life. What does that look like? What is that like kind of day to day?
Well, it's our children are pretty much part of the business workflow. They attend our business every day. They take classes with us.
That's nice.
So they, on top of the regular school, we pick them up from school, and then they come to the business, and the 2 youngest ones are the ones that they're more. So they both do the martial arts.
Nice.
One of them does piano as well. The other one does drums. We used to have a drum teacher. We don't at the moment, but he would take drum lessons as well. All the instruments are there, so they practice. They're both in band. So they get to go to the business. They get to practice their band music. They do their homework there. They attend the martial art classes, and then we go home. So their regular day is a little long, but most kids are long because they go to school. They have activities at school like ours do, and then sometimes they go home, or sometimes they go to other activities. The only difference is they just stay there with us because we're the instructors.
Yeah. Which is great. That's nice. I'm
It is
sure
nice.
the bonding that you all have, the bond that you have with them is pretty strong because of that.
Oh, most definitely.
Yes.
It's so much fun on the weekends. Sometimes, we're on Saturdays or Sundays, we have to go clean the business and get everything ready for the week, and they'll come with us and they'll help out, and so they get to see the business side. They're not just students, but they get to see the side where we have to do the upkeep for other students.
Right.
And then it's a nice area, so they bring their skates or their hoverboards, and they get to play for a while. We have smart TVs. They bring in their game consoles, and
They have fun with it too.
yeah, they have a lot of fun. They have a room. There's a room that they use all the time. There's a TV in there. There's internet. They do their homework. They watch movies, and
Nice.
so it's a very normal routine for them. The only difference is they're doing it there at the business
Right.
instead of doing it at home. So
It's home away from home.
It
exactly.
definitely is. Yes.
Wow. Wow. That's neat. That's neat that they are so involved in all of it with you, and the skills that the life lessons that must be teaching them in seeing all of that. And like you said, doing the upkeep and seeing the hard work, the grit that it takes. I'm sure that's just, so valuable too for them to see that. And from babies, from the time they were babies, right?
Yes. As they're getting older, I mean, we're giving them more responsibilities. They, when they have to, sweep, mop, take out trash, and things that they do normally sometimes at home. Sometimes because they're normally kids, but they do it there, and it's nice. They do have more responsibilities being older, and it's nice seeing them grow from being little ones crawling around our business to, now being a part of it and helping us out. It's really nice.
Yeah, that is. That's really cool. And how do you all incorporate prayer time into your family and just, talking about God? Is there like a specific time that you all come together to pray? Is it, just kind of throughout the day, your time together?
I would say definitely dinner time would be the time when we said that's when we get to sit down and.
That's like the calmest time, I'm sure.
Yes. They were at school all day. We were at the business, paperwork, calls, emails. We picked them up. We're teaching lessons. They take some of the lessons. We finish, and then we usually either go home and eat, or we just take them. Like last night, they wanted to go have like a burger, so we went to a burger place and sat down.
Mm-hmm.
But we sit down and we just talk. Like, how was school today? How was this? How was that? I think we eat out a little bit more than we should. But
that's understandable.
Yeah, but it's also it's nice to sit down and eat, and you're at a restaurant, a public place, and we make sure everybody prays before we eat. So just instilling in that for years in them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to pray. It doesn't matter if you're in public. It's not something you do just at home. It's the conversations that we have. So something as simple as a prayer.
Yes,
that's already an outward sign of your faith.
Right.
So, you go to, McDonald's, Whataburger, wherever you end up eating, and, you sit down before you eat, you pray. I mean, it takes 30 seconds. It's a quick prayer, but, just by the sign of the cross and the prayer, that's already setting time aside, saying, okay, we have all these things because of God. And that really helps, I think, bring everything home.
Yes.
And focus our intentions or our thoughts on what's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what does Mass look like? Since you're the music director, you're at most of the Masses.
Right.
So, Rachel, do you go with the kids? Do you all get to sit together usually? Or
now that they are older, we do sit, we sit close, but of course a little bit further away. I remember when they were a lot smaller, I would try and sit as close as I could to him, try and get some help. But it's a lot easier now. They are older, and it's
you don't have to run to the cry room or
exactly. So it's very different. I remember them being babies. He's always been involved with the music, and we would sit close to him, but I try not to sit too close because you don't want baby to hear on the microphone or anything. And I know with the brothers, they were always so used to being around the church. Our oldest they would call him a little politician. He would go and say hi to everybody, stand at the door and greet, and it was just very normal for us to be there. And they just knew the kids, and they were just always around music, and it's normal to them. They know Dad does the music, and now, now that they do music, they Dad kind of messed up there. Dad
they
messed
call
up.
you out.
They call me out.
And my youngest plays piano, and he's like, I think Dad messed up. And I'm like, quiet. I need to let him know after Mass. He hit the wrong note.
And he lets me know. He goes, on the offertory hymn, when you got to this part, you messed up. Yes, I know. Well, I mean, you should be careful. I go, yes, I know. I'm like, I'm the one with a degree in music here. Come on. I understand where I messed up, okay?
You're the teacher.
Yes.
Not anymore.
I know. Yeah, obviously not.
That's hilarious. So are there plans for him to join you anytime soon? Any of your sons to?
I would like for them to. And I kind of bring it up at least once every couple weeks. Like, okay, we should start working on something together, guys, and let's do it.
Yeah.
My middle child, he doesn't like he gets a lot of anxiety. He's in band.
Shy.
He's very shy. He's in band, so in band he does very well because it's a group.
Yes.
So he kind of hides in the group, and he likes doing that. So I tell him to come play with me. He goes, no, because it's just you, and then people can see me. So I think it's going to take a little bit longer for him to join. The younger one, though, he comes up and he's like, is the piano still on? I go, yes. Okay. Lower the volume. Okay. Look, it was like this, right? He starts kind of trying to, he gets the book and he tries to read the music and kind of do what I was doing for Mass. So I think within a year or so, I think I'm going to start bringing him up to play piano for me. at least for like the psalm or something,
Yes.
something that's not too difficult for him. But it would be nice for that.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And that too, I'm sure them just seeing you, seeing how you're involved, the leading by example, I'm sure that's got, there are seeds planted there.
Yes.
We try. And talking about planting seeds, one of the things we do talk about, we pray about it. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it'd be nice if one of our sons becomes a religious or a priest. That'd be so cool. Of course, it's whoever God calls, but
yes,
we tell them like, a religious or a priest or a permanent deacon or anybody that's called to a religious life, they're regular people, and having been involved with the brothers for so long and we know them very well, they would come over to the house often, or we would just go to the priory and we hang out with them and have dinner, and and they got to see that these people devote their lives to prayer and God,
right?
But they still sit down and have spaghetti for dinner, and they're still people. They're still, and
everyday normal people,
and their vocation is slightly different than most, but they're still people, and they have struggles, they have good days, they have bad days, and I think that's important for them to see. So, and even to this day, like Monsignor Harris will come over to the house, after Mass. I'll tell him, hey, I'm going to cook out today if you want to swing by, and he'll come by for a little bit, and the kids will see him. And
that's nice.
So it's not just Monsignor with the vestments and the incense, and it's, and all this, very glorious imagery that you see at Mass, but they see him sitting at the table, having a taquito.
Yes, more relatable.
Yeah. And we're just talking about anything really. Sometimes we talk about, what's happening at the Mass, anything changes we need to do. Sometimes we're just talking about a TV show that comes on, or music, and or one time we got into a whole conversation on classic TV shows.
Oh,
and that was just so much fun. We're talking about the old I Love Lucy shows, and what was the other one with Ed, the talking horse?
Yes.
Oh, yes, Mr. Ed.
Yes, Mr. Ed. So we were talking about all these old shows.
Kids what is that? You guys are too young. But
they're missing out.
Yeah, I know. But you see that it's just regular conversation. It's not, something that's not attainable.
Right.
Yes. So they would come over, the brothers would come over and play video games with the boys. And they're like, wow, this is so cool. I'm like, yeah, it's nice, them seeing that, like you said. It makes it, it's something. I know our oldest sometimes would say, like, I want to be a priest. And you think about it, and it's like, now that they're older, seeing this relationship they have with, priests and brothers, it just makes it more real, that they can maybe one day reach that, or maybe not, it's nice.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, wherever God calls them, right?
Wherever God calls them.
Said. Mm-hmm. But that's refreshing to hear, because I know I've heard, plenty of stories where people have said that their parents kind of discouraged it, or you hear of people like that they want grandkids. Mm-hmm. And so, promoting a vocation to the priesthood, not everybody is as open to it. And I think even more so just discussing it. I think that's something that unfortunately doesn't happen enough, and needs to happen more, just so, kids realize, just like you talk about being a doctor, or a lawyer, or a teacher, this is also, this is a special calling, and this is something that, just like those things, you can be a priest, you can be a religious sister, you can be a brother, so that's great to hear that you all are promoting that. I'm sure our vocations director, our chancellor, would be very happy to hear that, and Bishop too.
Of course.
So, but no, that's great. That's very special.
Yeah, I mean, we know a lot of vocations right now. Like you said, a lot of people do discourage their children from being religious or entering the priesthood. And I don't know. I mean, would that be? I mean, I think that'd be really neat. That'd be really cool. Like to know that, one of your children has that vocation, that calling to serve for the rest of their lives.
Right.
Because that's the calling of service.
Right.
And that's a very hard calling.
Yes.
So, that's something that not anybody can do. And
Mm-hmm.
if they're called to it and they go through with that calling, to me, that's a high point. That takes a lot of courage.
Yes.
Especially in today's world, it's very easy to shun that away because it's like, oh, it's old fashioned way of thinking, or it's outdated, but it's not. It's God's word is never outdated.
That's right.
God's word is that it just is.
Yes.
And it's the world that's trying to get away from it. So
yes,
if somebody does answer the call of vocation, that's very courageous, I think.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's so much criticism of the
Mhm.
Catholic Church from those who don't understand Catholicism, right? That's really where it comes from, and misperceptions of what the church is. But there's such criticism. So you're absolutely right. I think especially in this day and age, it does take just so much courage to follow that path, to be willing to carry the crosses that come with that vocation, which are definitely unique. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing. So we will be praying for your sons that
Please do.
Yes.
I think that's why it's important. Like, at least in my mind, I might be wrong about this, but that prayer before eating, especially if we're eating out, like I want the kids to feel like, people might be looking at you, might be giving you weird looks, like why are you doing that in public? But that's who you are. That's who we are, and that's what we do. And whether other people agree with it or not doesn't change the fact that what we do is real and it's true.
Right.
And we have to stand strong in that. So it's a very simple gesture. It's actually easier to do here in Laredo because it's a Hispanic town. It's kind of, these visual symbols are very common in our culture.
Yes.
But when we go out of town, I'm like, hey, have you prayed? And they're like, I prayed in my mind. I go, no. We have to do it like together, and they're like, okay. And do you, and we constantly ask them, are you praying at school? And they're like, yeah, we pray at school. Okay, well, you have to make sure you pray at school and do it properly and not just, not hide away from it.
Yes. Yeah. Just rush through it. And
Mm-hmm. Right. So little things that I think, hopefully are making a big difference in their lives and
Mm-hmm.
their understanding.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an important point, that it doesn't have to be anything major. It's all the little things that we do that add up. And, even the things that are just unplanned that come up, the way we interact with our children, right? And the way the conversations, we can kind of direct them. Just plenty of opportunities to bring God into that, to remind them of the importance of the faith. And so, yeah, that's a really good point. It's the small ways. So were you both, I'm curious, after we've talked about all this, kind of backtracking, but were you both raised Catholic, or what's the story with your own personal faith growing up?
I was raised Catholic. We were parishioners at San Martin de Porres.
Okay.
So I was involved with the youth, the retreats, a lot of the things that young kids would do. And then moving away from Laredo, I went to school in the Valley in Edinburgh, University of Texas Pan American, where I started school. And I would go to church, but not as often, and then coming back to Laredo is when I got involved with the brothers and did my Acts retreat, did all of that, all those things. And that's when we kind of met. So
Okay.
I've always been involved with the church with my family.
That's beautiful.
Oh, it's my turn.
It's your turn.
It's your turn.
It's my turn.
It's your turn.
So my whole family is Catholic, but we weren't very active Catholics.
Okay.
I joke around and I say we were Christers. And people are like, what's a Christer? I go, you go to church on Christmas and Easter.
Oh.
We used to go to St. Jude's. I remember going to St. Jude's a lot when we were younger. My older sisters would sing in the choir there. And then my mom helped with their CCD program. So we were active for several years there. And then when my sister stopped singing in the choir, my mom stopped doing CCD, going to church became a very passive thing in our family. And it was just kind of that. It was more of a cultural thing. You know, you're a cultural Catholic because you're Hispanic. You're just Catholic kind of by default. So when I moved out of town, when I moved to Corpus, you know, I was 18 on my own, you know, living on my own, and you kind of get thrown into the world and you're like, well, what's really out there? What's really true? What isn't? So I went through this whole, you know, trying to figure out what I was going to do in regards to that. So, you know, I actually did a lot of, you know, looking around or searching, I guess you can call it. So I did like, I went to a couple non-denominational Christian churches. I went to like Baptist churches. I went to synagogues. I went to a bunch of different faiths, different branches of the faith. And they were nice, but, you know, never really felt home. And, you know, being Hispanic and having grown up Catholic, I remember thinking, like, I don't know what to do. So I remember I was praying to Mary, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and asking for some kind of guidance and help. And at that point, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who was Baptist, by the way. But he called me and he goes, hey, there's a lady. He was from Alice. He goes, there's a lady here in Alice that needs an accompanist on piano. Do you want the job? It's playing at a church. And I'm a college kid. I'm not making a lot of money. I have a lot of bills. I go, yeah, I'll take any job, you know. And he goes, and I go, well, what kind of church is it? I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, I just accepted a job like at a Pentecostal church. I have no idea what I'm going to do, right? Because he's Baptist. I don't know where this was going. And he goes, oh, no, she sings at the Catholic church. I'm like, okay, I kind of know something about that, right? Because I grew up Catholic.
Right.
And I go, okay, that's great. I go, well, what's the name of the parish? He goes, it's Our Lady of Guadalupe. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, okay, I guess I belong there. And that's really how I kind of came back into the faith. Is I started going to work there. I'm going to say work because I wasn't going to church. I was going to the church, but I wasn't going to church. If that makes any sense.
Yes. It was just kind of a job for
you.
It
was a job.
First.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was just a job. So I was there and I was playing and all these things. And then Lent came around and the priest, Father Ray Irlas, who's up in Rockport, I think now, he tells me, he goes, hey, you know, he talked with the lady that hired me and me. He goes, don't forget, guys, we're not going to do the Alleluias anymore. We need to do these changes. And I'm like, why? Like, why
so foreign to you?
I was like, why are we changing? Like, I was there for a couple months. I'm finally getting the hang of the mass, right? And then it's like, we have to do changes. Like, why? And he's like, well, it's a different season. And I'm like, I don't get it. So then he had me talk to Richard Rivera, who was the RCIA director. He goes, talk to Richard. He'll help you out. So then Richard's like, okay, here, you gotta, he got me some VHS tapes. I'm dating myself, right? VHS tapes of some talks of some, you know, apologetics type talks. So he goes, the first one you gotta see is this one. And he gave me a conversion story of Scott Hahn. So, I saw that tape and I was like, wow, that's really cool. But I still don't understand the seasons. Like, so he goes, okay, well, just go with me here. Now watch this tape. And he gave me a tape of Tim Staples. So then I heard one of Tim Staples' talks. And then he started giving me like CDs. We just found out like the new cars don't even have CD players anymore.
I know. Isn't that horrible?
I know. I'm really dating myself, right? So he gave me some CDs on my drive because I was living in Corpus, but I was driving to Alice every Sunday to play the mass. So it's a 45-minute drive. So on my drive, I was listening to these talks, nice. Michael Crumby, all these apologetics at the time, right? And I started like hearing their conversion stories, why they went from being, you know, Calvinists or Protestants or Baptists and coming home to the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, okay, I see why they're going home, but then why does home do all these other things? And then that's when he's like, okay, now let's sit down and talk. And we started talking about the seasons and just really how Father Ray sat me down and he goes, it's a natural thing. He goes, in the natural world, we have seasons. You have your spring, you have your summer, fall, and winter.
Right.
He goes, it's a very natural process. He goes, the church does that too with their spiritual life. I'm like, okay, I can get behind that. And I just start reading more. And before I knew it, like I was back in the church. Like I was going to mass now. I wasn't just going to go play, even though I was still showing up to play, but it wasn't just a job anymore. Right. So this is when I feel like I came into the church.
Wow. So God has definitely used music to bring you into the church.
Right.
Just at different points. And God has also just been very gracious to you and just like dropping jobs in your lap.
Oh my gosh, beyond gracious.
Yes.
It's I mean, I can't, there's no way I can deny him, because like it's very evident. And when I sit down and think about it, it's very evident that without his grace, without his help, I'd be nowhere. I'd have nothing.
Yeah.
So,
and our Blessed Mother too, with that being, that's incredible. That's really like gives me chills to to think of that. Wow.
I know. I hadn't thought about that in a long time. But yeah, it was funny because I remember, praying for guidance to Our Lady of Guadalupe, and then I end up
at Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Our Lady of Guadalupe Church.
Wow.
And then from there is when I really came back into the faith, and it's growing up cultural Catholic is what I call it. We never picked up the Bible. We never opened it up. I was like, I heard, the priests and the readers would read stuff, but I was like, I didn't know where it was coming from or anything like that. And then coming back into the church that way, I felt, I don't know, very almost awake. Like,
Sure.
Oh, this is where this is coming from. And, you start hearing, I would hear the readings, and now they're no longer like, oh, come on, just get through it. It's something that happened. It's something that's alive. Something that happened, that is going to happen, something that is happening. It's
relevant.
It really changes everything.
Yes. Well, and I've often heard, converts are usually better versed and know more about Catholicism than cradle Catholics in a lot of cases, because they've taken the time. So like you did, studying it and really diving into it. You had that opportunity. I think that's really cool too, that you had that time, that you had that 45-minute drive when, you would have that time to study more the faith and listen to these apologists and learn more about the faith. And who better than from those who have converted and
they didn't just convert because they had to, because they're going to get married or anything like that. It's people that left a career in another denomination. I always think of Scott Hahn, because he's like one of the biggest apologetics out there. But Scott Hahn had a career in another religion. He was up there.
Yes.
And for him to come to the Catholic Church, he had to abandon everything he grew up in, everything he knew. But he did it because he knew that coming to the Catholic Church was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
That's where his studies.
Yeah.
That's where his studies took him, and he didn't just learn it from a book. He went historically, and the church fathers. You read that, and I mean that's so very different. If anybody ever gets a chance to read some of the books, you read them, and it's very in depth, or almost even dense material sometimes.
Yes,
because the Bible wasn't really official until 300 AD. So you look at all these church fathers between the first couple centuries, and they were led by the Holy Spirit, and because they had such a close connection to Christ who walked with them, that those teachings are very, very deep and dense. So when you can look at that and you look at the Bible, and that's when the church talks about their tradition. You're looking at the church fathers. That's our tradition and the scripture. And it's just, there's just no denying the truth of the church.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I think it's pretty amazing that, like you said, like with Scott Hahn and with others, they converted really in trying to prove Catholicism to be wrong.
Yes.
That was kind of their mission was, we're going to prove this wrong. And then they ended up finding out, oh, wait, I was actually wrong.
Right. When one of Scott Hahn's talks, he talks about the first time when he was converting, when he felt that he started to convert, but hadn't made it official. Like, he hadn't told anybody because he was studying, again, to disprove the church. And the more he read about it, he's like, how can I disprove this? It's like, it makes sense.
Right.
It's correct. He talks about going to a daily mass in a small church. And he sits in the very, very back. He says, I sat there and mass started. He goes, everything the priest was saying, the prayers, the symbolism, he goes, it's like I was watching the Bible come to life. Mm. I'm getting chills just thinking about that because it's, when you read about it, like you read, I like his book, The Lamb's Supper.
Yes.
That's a great book, so he talks a lot about that as well. And it's, if you grow up in the church, you're just like, oh, it's mass. But with somebody from the outside coming in, having studied the Bible so thoroughly and church history, and then sees that, and they say that is the living church from when Christ was around, that Christ established, and it's happening every mass. Like, do you not want to go to mass?
Right.
Mm-hmm. So anyways.
No, yeah, you're right. It's easy to take for granted that, which you grow up with. It can become very routine, I think, right? Mass and especially, kids, it's hard to understand, like you're saying, but when you do come to understand that, and when you do take more time to focus on what the Mass truly is and the sacrifice that's happening at every Mass, it just makes a world of difference and comes a whole new appreciation.
It does. And then when you realize that, then going a little bit to what we talked a little bit earlier today is, then you realize that as a musician, like, there's certain music you don't play at Mass because of the reality of the sacrifice. So it's, there's a lot of great music out there that we use a lot for retreats,
right?
And conferences and all these, especially youth activities.
Yes.
And like praise and worship music is great. We have a very strong praise and worship Catholic artist like Matt Moore.
Yes.
He has wonderful music. But most of the music that's put out there that's praise and worship doesn't belong at the Mass. Because again, if you recognize and realize the significance of the sacrifice of the Mass, how can you be, I don't know, like just the image of the sacrifice, and then you hear drums, like
it doesn't fit.
It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. It's that music plays a very big role in that. I've been very lucky that I've been able to work with wonderful music directors and priests that I'll come in. I'm like, oh, we're going to do this because it sounds fun. It sounds great. And they're like, yeah, it's fun and great. They're like, but it's not for Mass. I'm like, what do you mean? So I've been learning this. I mean, it's not something I just learned 1 year and that's it.
Right.
I keep learning every year something new or every week even. Like I'll play a hymn and Monsignor will come up to me and be like, hey, we're not supposed to play that hymn anymore. I'm like, why not? And he's like, I'll send you an article. So he sends me an article and I'm like, oh, the bishops declared because of this. Okay. So I have to go into my hymn. No, I'm like, don't play this hymn, or don't play this song or don't. So, I'm always learning. And, I think that's, again, music's a big, big part of who I am and how I came into the church. So I try to do things right for the church.
That's wonderful. And that speaks a lot about, who you are as a person, that you would take the time, that you want to continue learning more and want to take the advice and that you're willing to find out the why behind it, and to make it more reverent, to add to the Mass, to make it something. I mean, really, it plays such a critical role. I think a lot of people, we don't think about it, and it is nice, when it's a fun, upbeat song, you can appreciate that. But when you think about, okay, but how does it fit in with the Mass? Then that's kind of a different story.
Right. Yeah. I mean, praise and worship is a great evangelical tool for sure. But again, that's just because it's a great tool doesn't mean you can use it everywhere.
Right.
So it has to be used properly, just like any tool.
Yes.
So it's, definitely.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And people should be asking why more often and not just be like, I don't know. I know a lot of people get uncomfortable when you ask them like, well, why do you believe this? And they're like, well, we just do, and they just want to drop the subject. But if we take the time to try to figure out why we believe what we do, then like for us, when our kids ask, well, why do we this? Those are always fun conversations. Like we'll sit there and we'll talk like for 20, 30 minutes and they're like, okay, Dad, we get it. We didn't want a long lecture.
Sorry we asked.
Sorry we asked. But it's better than just being like, because.
Right.
There is a why.
Yes.
There is a reason why we believe what we believe, why the church teaches what it teaches. And I know I don't have all the answers. I definitely don't have all the answers. There's a lot of things I'm like, I'll get back to you, or let's research it together.
Right.
And we'll sit there on our laptop or on our phones and look up information and see what happens. But, I think if we allow people to ask why, I think we would just have, I don't want to use the word better, but better believers, people that really know stronger there. Thank you. Stronger believers at a stronger church, really.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's just so much richness to Catholicism. There's so much to our faith that really, we can study our whole lives and, will still be more to study. And so taking the time to look it up, taking the time for your kids, that's really just so beautiful that you make that time to speak with them, to share with them so that they can be well-formed, so that they can continue to grow in their faith with the knowledge, with having a little bit better of an understanding behind it, which also, when you understand it more, you're not as likely to abandon that, to question and to stray away from it. So yeah, you're right. That's so important is making that time to, find out the reason why.
Right.
When we don't know it. So,
yeah. Going back to, how you asked about how it is now that our kids are, in the church and he's away or at the music, they will ask me questions all the time, why is purple or Lent, or the branches and
they notice all
these things now.
Yes.
They're older. And I'm like, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later. And it's nice, seeing that they're wanting to learn more. And there's some things I don't know either. We don't know the questions to. So we do, I'll go, hey, I'll tell my husband, they asked a question. I don't know the answer, help me out. And I
don't know it either.
And we're like, oh no. So we'll talk about it. And it's nice. We're learning together now as family. It's great. It's seeing them growing up in that and learning together. It's just, it's beautiful, being children and having them be quiet. And then now they're just together. We're asking questions and learning more. It is very beautiful seeing that growth.
It's not bad to question.
Right.
I go question. We need to question things. I go, there's a difference between questioning your faith and doubting your faith.
Right.
Right. So we can have questions every day without doubting, and that's very possible. And that's how I really, really feel and believe. Like I have so many questions every year. I would think back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I learned all these new things because I had questions. Whenever Monsignor comes over, or like Father Lolo at the time was at Mother Community, he would come over, or any priest or religious, we always end up having some kind of religious conversation, like, well, why this or why that? And
sure.
And it's so, it's so nice to hear so many different people give their perspective and their understanding. Because these people, that's what they studied.
Yes.
So they can give a much deeper explanation, and that helps us as well.
Yes. Yeah, it does. It does. And that's such an important point that you all brought up. Just that parents are, the primary faith teachers. I think so often it's easy. Okay, your kids go to CCD classes and they fulfill that requirement. And, I know while they're preparing for a sacrament, you have to go to mass and, get things checked off. But it's not just about checking off all the things that you're supposed to do. It's more than that. And it's, and the foundation begins at home, begins and is further nurtured at home. And I think that's a real privilege that as parents, and I have through my own, as parents, it's great that we're able to to do that we're able to form our kids. And I mean, and that's the goal, right, of parents, is to
Right.
get our kids to heaven. So why shouldn't we take that extra time with them and help form them and shape them and answer the whys, and point things out to them, the different colors of the liturgical seasons and all of that.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Well, is there anything else that you all would like to share? I feel like we've covered so much, and I've
We
loved
did. We kind of
learning.
we covered a lot.
Yes. We did.
I don't know. Is there anything?
I can't think of anything.
Me neither. Unless you have any other questions. It's like one question will open up like 3 topics.
Yes.
And then it just kind of spirals from there.
Yes, it does. And it's been fantastic getting to learn more about both of you and just really getting to know you a little bit more as business owners, as, parents, just as individuals. So I appreciate so much you coming to join us here at Who's in the Pew.
No, and thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you
Good.
for
I'm
having
glad you
us.
liked
Yes.
it. Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of Who's in the Pew. We hope you'll join us next week. And we'd like to thank all of our sponsors and all of our supporters as well for making this show possible.